Okay, so I got the move mouse function in. Well, it still needs a little bit of work, but we're going to go ahead and show that. So just call the function, and then I set up a speed variable so that we can adjust how fast this goes. Just remember, our controller will return a value somewhere between negative and positive 100 to represent a percent of how far it's pushed in each way. Then again, just write the command and then cast the read line into an integer, and then we can use the move relative with just whatever we get back from that times our speed value, which we can refine and debugging later and kind of testing, find a good number for that. A good balance between the amount of time. I'll just call it a frame rate. To make that easy to say, I'm just going to say the frame rate of our main loop and the speed we're moving. So we'll kind of try some error, do a little trial and error, find a good value for both of those where it balances out nicely. And when putting the thing together, I returned the pushing the joystick up gives us a positive Y, but remember on a screen, on the screen for our computers, down is the positive Y. So in order for the mouse to move down whenever the control goes down, and that way it doesn't feel all backwards, I just took the negative of what comes back. And then just move, the percentage we get back times the speed in both directions. So if we come over here and run that, again with Python we have to wait for it to boot up. In other languages we don't have to. And I still haven't fixed that -4 thing. Remember the rest position was in -4. So that's still going to need fixed, but I want to wait until the PCB comes in before fixing that, is the reason that hasn't been fixed. Or something that might be a little bit better even is set some wiggle room in the middle so that we have to go like 7 or 8. It has to reach positive 7 before it starts moving to the right, or has to get all the way to -7 before it starts moving left. And that way we have a little bit of wiggle room. But you can see from moving the joystick around, we've got the mouse controls in there. Still a little bit of refinement, and it still looks a little jumpy, so kind of work with the speed and frame rate to find a good value so that it looks smooth, but that can come later. Once we get all the parts in there, then we clean it up. But the joystick, moving the mouse works. We still haven't fixed that -4 issue, and now I'm thinking a little bit of buffer room in the middle will work. Kind of like on a video game, we usually don't have our camera follow the character immediately. There's a dead zone in the middle of the screen where the character can move before the camera jerks around. And same thing here, have a little dead zone in the middle of the controller where just the slightest bit of wiggling doesn't move our mouse yet. So then we can exit out of the script. There it goes. So everything so far is kind of working. It definitely needs cleaned up, but things seem to be moving along nicely. So the next thing here, added the scroll wheel function, and there is an H scroll that I've used before, but apparently H scroll only works on Linux. So on a Windows machine with PyAutoGUI, all we have is the vertical scroll. And I'll do some looking into it, see if I can find the horizontal scroll, but there doesn't seem to be one automatically come out of there. But usually we can click and drag the bottom scroll bar. Vertical scrolling will be enough. But basically the same thing. I set a speed, but then I ended up not using that because it does not scroll very far at all. So it actually needs increased, if anything, not decreased. But if we come over here and run that, so Python basic control unit.py, again it'll boot up just like before, and the mouse is working just like before. If we come over here and click, which I have to do with the regular mouse, now you can see I'm on the the UV axis on the joystick and can scroll up and down the page. So the controls are coming together. So have the moving the mouse and scrolling the wheels. So next thing is obviously going to be some clicks. So go ahead and end that. And I'll get the clicks put in here and be right back. Though, be right back in the video, but I think I'm going to think for a little while before I put those in there, because I have 4 buttons and I'm trying to decide what the best way would be. Because one thing I was thinking is the obvious 3 of those buttons could be left, middle, right, and then that 4th button could be used for something else, or maybe we can combine different things. So like the left, middle, right, and then that 4th button automatically double clicks, or I'm going to think for a little while before I do it, but that'll just be a second in the video, and I'll come up with some combination that at least the basic left, middle, and right click seems kind of obvious. But I'll see if I come up with any better ideas. Okay, so I got a couple more things added in there, and while I was at it, doing the instructions for the documentation, because the best time to write up the instructions on how to do something is as soon as you finish debugging it, just as a good rule of thumb. So got that put on the documentation page. XY axis joystick to move it, UV axis joystick for scrolling, and then I just went with A, B, and C buttons for left, middle, and right. That will probably be improved later though, because I have some other ideas rattling around in my brain. Made a couple other changes. Basically, the main one is I increased the speed tremendously, and I did do that little dead zone right in the middle of the controller. So that got rid of that wiggle, and especially for trying to move slowly, you can ease into where it starts to move. Still some adjustments. It's not quite the right spot, but that just a little condition so that there's a little bit of wiggle room. And the main thing for right now is it takes care of that -4 from the rest position, and then just a little bit of wiggle room on the vertical scroll, but might have to adjust that some as well. And yeah, everything else is about the same. I just did an if for each button, and I did if for each one instead of an elif, so because I can't think of any situations, but I can't say that we don't sometimes click both buttons together. I couldn't really think of anything, but I figured might as well check all 3 instead of just one or the other. And the exit condition is still the same. But if we come back over here and run that, the controller will boot up. So the connection was made, and now the joystick moves a whole lot faster. So I'll come over here and left click. Can double click on words. Still making refinements. So where'd my cursor go? Oh, it shot way off the screen there. So still making refinements. We can left click, and I don't think the middle click does anything in the text editor anyway, but a right click pulls up the menu. So the clicks are working, the scrolling, the moving the mouse. Still needs some refining, so I'll get into making refinements here and little adjustments, but it's going to follow that same general process. And when in the next video, this will be much more cleaned up, and I'll just kind of discuss what led to those decisions. But I think I'm going to spend just a couple days cleaning up this code and some trial and error, getting like these speed values balance out between the speed value and the frame rate, and all sorts of cleanup, and get some practice going, and start thinking about the design for some games to test it as a game controller when we're ready for that, or after finishing this. But the basic mouse functions are working, so that seems like a good stopping point here. Oh yeah, and we still have that exit condition. Turn the knob down below a quarter of the way. and push the A and C button together, and that gracefully exits from our script. And this line's important because if you don't close the connection, like if while debugging, if we just had to suddenly crash the program and then went back to the Arduino IDE and tried to upload something, it would fail the first time. The second time it would run, but if we don't close this, if we don't close the connection, then this is still using the COM6 port. So we do have to make sure and close that. But if for some reason it like crashes while testing and you have to go back to the Arduino IDE and upload an updated version of the driver for that, then just be prepared that it will fail the first time, because if the program just crashes, the Python script is still using that COM port as far as the computer is concerned, even if the Python script quit running a long time ago. But I'm going to spend a little while cleaning this up and planning out a couple simple games to test this as a game controller as well. And I'll see you all then.